First of all, fear is normal. And having invested all of this money and time into law school, to have this be something that you're facing when you're graduating is very challenging. But it also opens up a lot of opportunity. Like the same thing with me when I didn't go down the traditional path of going to a law firm out of law school. I would say a lot of the 10 percenters of the class were looking at me going, well, like,
Yeah.
sucks for you. Like, because you didn't make it.
Yeah.
And that's such a limiting belief, right? That there is only one way to succeed in a legal career. There are jobs that have not been made possible yet. Like there are jobs that haven't been created yet because of this AI revolution.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Beacon Voices. I'm Akshay Verma, the COO at SpotDraft, and your host for our podcast. I am really excited to have a conversation today with Wei Wang, who is the AGC in charge of GTM and Strategic Partnerships at TRM Labs. Wei, welcome to the podcast. Why don't we start with just telling us a little bit about yourself and where that beautiful sunshine is coming from?
Sure. Thank you so much, Akshay. I am Wei. I've been in the legal commercial space for all of my career. So I grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, went to law school in the area, and then just started working high tech for the past 12 to almost 13 years of legal practice. I've been supporting in house legal teams and mostly go to market, uh, specializing in commercial contracting and strategic partnerships. Really working my way up from contract administrator all the way up to where I am today.
Yeah.
And in terms of the sunshine that you were mentioning, sunny California is a great place to be, but so is sunny Lake Tahoe. And fortunately, 6 years ago during COVID, I was able to make the shift from, working and living in the Bay Area to now working full time from the mountains.
I want to talk a little bit later about, changing your mindset as we are getting into this age of AI, especially for lawyers. And you and I talked about this when we were preparing for the podcast, which is that so many people made a change in their mindset of where they were going to live, how they were going to work, where they were going to work from. And it's really opened up lives for people in a way that maybe we had not ever imagined. And I think it's been an amazing thing. We are also very fortunate to live in California, where in late February we can have days like this. It's going to be 75 degrees here in the Bay Area today, which is great. I would like for it to cool down for a little bit longer, get a little bit more water and some more snow up in the mountains. But I will take this little reprieve from the cold and rain that we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I want to talk a little bit before we kind of get into your in-house career, and especially with lawyers who come on this podcast. I have a very specific story about why I went to law school, but I'd love to hear yours. You went to undergrad at UC Santa Barbara. Was there anything there that was telling you, or was there anything before undergrad that was telling you, hey, Wei, you got to go become a lawyer, and here's why?
You know, I would love to say that it's because I'm a really good Asian, and I decided to make
Yeah.
my parents happy.
Yeah.
But in truth, and all at the end of it all, it was actually they were very fortunate that I just really enjoyed the intellectual part of what lawyers do. And when I was in high school, I was really highly involved in speech and debate. That was really fun for me to do, research and then argue both sides of a case. I thought I wanted to be a litigator. I really enjoyed public speaking. I wanted to
Yeah.
get out in front of people. And then I talked to the first litigator I met, while during one of those networking events. And they said, well, I hate to break it to you, but you're
Yeah.
not litigating in a courthouse
No.
99% of the time.
Not at all. As someone who litigated for 6.5 years, I can very much validate that piece of advice. So good for whoever told you that.
Yeah, they were, I mean, yeah, so exactly that. And I think just the fact that it was a very, it was a very intellectually fulfilling, but also challenging discipline that really
Yeah,
got me into law school.
yeah. And you and I both went to Santa Clara, and one of the things that I figured out, later in my very much post grad um, while I was working was in the Bay Area, especially the in-house world, which is as many lawyers as there are here in the Bay Area on the in-house side. It's a very small community. Everyone kind of knows each other. Santa Clara Law has a huge chunk of the percentage of people who work in-house. Did you know that going into law school? Is that something that drew you to Santa Clara, or is that something you just kind of figured out along the way?
Not at all. Yeah, I had no idea. I actually didn't know that I wanted to go in-house directly from law school when I entered law school. It was just something that ended up becoming what happened,
Yeah.
and a very unusual path.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Was there anything in law school that was telling you you got to go in house, or this is what I want to do? I know you went straight into the commercial side of things, but was there anything about law school itself that kind of gave you an idea of what to do next, or did you just kind of stumble upon it?
Yeah, law school had a very prescriptive path of success. I don't know if you recall, but we had our on-campus interviews, and the
Oh
top
yes,
10% would get invited to all the big law firms. So if you really weren't in that OCI circuit with the law, summer associateships, you were not considered to be quote unquote successful back in when I was in law school. So when I was there, it was really hard to not fall into that same line of thought.
yeah,
And I did not think that in-house was actually the path that I should pursue, or that it would be rightfully what I wanted to do and ended up really enjoying doing in my career. But at the time it was very much, this is the one path. You either are on it or you're not.
yeah. I actually I wrote a LinkedIn post about this just a couple of days ago about how rigid the opportunities were coming out of law school. Certainly when I came out in 2006, there almost was no thought of anything but going to a law firm. I think maybe 7, 8 years later, um, well, post kind of the explosion of the in-house department in general, but also legal operations and legal technology, and we'll get into that in a minute. But the financial crisis had a lot to do with that. The 2008 financial crisis had a lot to do with how legal departments were thinking about talent and growth and efficiency. And I think that started opening up the doors for very junior lawyers to break into the in-house world. Um, so you're in law school, you go through the motions just like we all did. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Did you enjoy your law school
I did.
experience? Yeah,
I
it
did.
sounds like
Yeah,
Santa Clara is a great school. Like
it
my
is.
wife and I met at Santa Clara. I was in my first year, so it's got a special place in our hearts. But we do a ton of stuff with the school still, and it's an incredible community. Not that this was supposed to be like a big name drop for Santa Clara Law, but it's a fantastic school. It's got an incredible alumni network,
Mhm.
all up and down the West Coast, but especially here in the Bay Area. And I also I loved my time in law school, but I ended up going to a law firm. You did not. You didn't go to a law firm. You went straight in house. Tell us about how that happened.
Right. I think it was my second year of law school. So I was staring down the barrel of the gun of, summer approaching. I think it was April or May. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it was already too late for a summer associate. If you're really applying through the OCI process, you're definitely already too late. Um, and I was sitting. I remember this so clearly, but I was sitting in antitrust with a friend, and was working at Google at the time. She was doing kind of like a part-time program, and she said, "Hey, we're looking for a contract administrator for the summer. I'm not sure if you're interested, but if you want to, this is a really cool gig to get. You still get to work intellectually with contracts, but it's
Yeah,
not so hard to get into." And I said, I mean, yes, of course, everybody would love, who doesn't want to go work for Google for the summer?
yeah,
So it just worked out that I got, my foot through the door on that job. And then they kept me on after the summer and they said, hey, if you're interested in staying part time with us, you're doing great work. Like, we'd love to keep you. So I ended up staying with them and then working part time while I was in law school for the last year that I was there.
yeah. And then you went and joined them after law school. Did that? Did you? Would you say that that really opened up the door to the in-house world for you? Because it's not something that most law students, at least back when I was coming out. Granted, it's been 20 years. I keep saying back when I was coming. It's not. It was a long time ago. 20 years is a long time ago. But but it's not something that I would have thought of back then because it was like, well, that's not lawyering. And so therefore I'm not going to go do that because I just spent 3 years working my ass off,
Mhm.
spending a lot of money. I'm staring down a lot of debt coming out of law school. And so I really need to go to, but you made a different choice. And it's very obvious now with the benefit of hindsight, looking at your career, that it really did open up doors. But were you thinking about it that way back then?
Honestly, so many people, and you spoke about the mentorship and the alumni network of SEU, and
Yeah.
how it's a really robust network. And so I had a lot of mentors. I took a lot of advantage of that program and met with lawyers that were seasoned and in their career. And they all told me the same thing. They said, "Look, Google's great. Enjoy the benefits. This is also the heyday of the tech, the boom, right?
Yeah.
So everything was really fun. But if you really want to learn legal acumen and get really trained in legal discipline, you need to go to a law firm.
Yeah.
Just go there for 3 to 5 years. It's going to suck. But once you get out, that's how you really get your footing back in house."
Yeah.
So I had that advice left and right. And then I
Yeah.
met with law partners. I had a lot of friends in law firms at the time. So I met with their partners to see if that was really something that I wanted to get into. And honestly, like it was like one path was saying this is what you should do, and then the other path was like I really don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
um,
Why?
so in
Why?
the end,
What part of you was like, I really don't want to do this law firm thing? And did you ever figure out why it was telling you that?
it's kind of funny. It's like watching people smile, but then their eyes are crying for help. It's,
Oh no! No! Yeah. Oh no! Yeah. Tell me how
like
you
please
really
don't.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah, edit
Yeah.
this part out. No,
No,
but
not at
I
all.
really.
It's so true. I think it. I don't think we talk about this enough, to be honest, in our profession.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
teach a class at Santa Clara. I've been teaching it since 2017 or 18 now. It's a mandatory course now for 1Ls. It's called Critical Lawyering Skills.
Very
And it's all
important.
about what it's like to practice law and not the substance of things. And um, one of the pieces of data that I share with the students in the first class is around the mental health aspect of our profession. It's awful. And
Yeah.
out of the survey that I share is, I think it looked at like 100 and some odd professions across the country. And in terms of kind of the happiness score, I'm summarizing that as a gateway to the conversation. We're bottom two, and I can't remember what the bottom one was, but we're second to last. And there are real reasons for that. And I think a lot of it has to do with this, the point of the conversation that we're just having right now, which is people kind of put these fake smiles on, grin and bear it, grit their teeth and get through it. But it is, for me, I'm not going to speak for everybody, it was a soul sucking experience, which is why I left it.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it's going to be like that for everybody, but it is like that. I believe it's like that for the vast majority of law firm lawyers.
Yeah.
And, we can talk about all the different reasons why that might be, but it's a reality. And I do think it's important to talk about it. So kudos to your inner voice for picking up on that. And kudos to your inner voice for having enough sway with you to be like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. I think there's another path. So how did that decision go?
Well, wonderfully, it turns out,
Yeah.
because I've been in house my whole career. So from Google, I went to Stanford, worked in the university central contracting office for a number of years before I went over then to Accenture, worked in that environment. Very different. These are all very different paces and cultures. And then from there, I went to Uber, and now I'm at TRM Labs. And I feel like every single experience has brought me the experience and the kind of know-how that I needed for the next step. And
Yeah.
every time I've jumped, I've gotten happier and more fulfilled in
Ah,
what I'm doing and what I get to do. So I would say, yeah, in hindsight, and of course hindsight is always 2020,
it
but
is. It is.
it's there's something to be said about listening to your gut versus listening to what everybody else says is the right thing. And I know for lawyers that's really hard because we
Oh,
like
it's so
concrete,
hard.
paths. We like certainty. We don't like risk. So to do the thing that is, kind of the road less traveled by is very unconventional and risky. But I kind of looked at it as like, if there's no path, then there's no end to the opportunities and possibilities. So you get to make that whatever you want it to be. So,
That's beautifully stated. And also, culturally speaking, from our backgrounds, I come from an Indian background, you come from an Asian background. Like that's another layer of complexity to add into the equation. Our cultures, certainly my parents. I mean, like, my dad, I would say, he left India in '84 with us. I was 8 years old. My brother was 5. We had no money, no friends here in the U.S. We had nothing. But so that's a big risk. So I don't know that I could say that he wasn't a risk taker, but generally speaking, our cultures tend to be very risk averse, and we look for stability, and we look for the path, and we look for like, well, in 5 years you should be here, and in 15 and 20 years you're going to be great because you've walked this path that we know and is
right.
familiar to us, and so that's taking you towards that stability. It's very much a legal kind of legal profession type of mentality. I walked it, and then I thankfully was very unconventional by nature myself, so I was like, no, fuck this, I'm out. I'm gonna have to go do something different. And I love what you just talked about, which is that you found the stepping stone. And I'm going to ask you a very poignant question around this in just a minute. But you found the stepping stone at each path and at each stop, and now you can look back on it and say, I learned this in the last stepping stone to get me to my next one. So here's the question: was any of that intentional? Was it planned, or did you just luck out, or is there something else at play?
Yeah, it's not a single bullet answer, right? Like if you're driving towards a mountain, I love this analogy because I self-soothe with this image.
Yeah.
But you imagine you're driving towards a mountain, right? And the mountain's really large and it's really high, and you're on the road to it, but you can't see where the road goes. You're just told that you could get over the mountain. And it really is only when you're at the foot of the mountain or when you're going through the bends that you know where the road is going. And
Yeah.
then thereby how to navigate your driving to get over it. And so I kind of think about like if you have an objective, right? Like I want to go in-house, then that's your mountain. But how you get there really doesn't appear for you. The path doesn't really appear until you start walking it or
Yeah.
you start driving it, and then you start to use and trust and develop and nurture your soft skills, the adaptiveness, the curiosity, the discipline and learning, the work ethic, right? All those things that make up who you are as a professional and as a person, that comes into, those are like your engines, those are like your tires, your horsepower that get you over the mountain.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic analogy. All right, let's get a little metaphysical and keep it with that analogy. You're a deal lawyer. You work on crazy complex deals, strategic partnerships. Do you take that same approach when you're working on kind of big complex deals? Would you say it's the same thing in a microcosm?
in the sense, it's not dissimilar. I love that you made that kind of analogy. I think with deals, what's different about that is you have an end goal, right? So
Yep.
that, let's say that is your mountain,
Yep.
but you also kind of know where the curves are going to be. Like usually from deal to deal, there are 5 to 8 provisions that you're going to spend some time on.
Yeah.
And I think once you start to navigate those, maybe the first few times you navigate them, you're like, oh, wow, that was really a doozy
Yeah.
negotiating that. But after a while, you start to know where the fallback positions are, where your business lands, what you're going to say no to. And then they become kind of fun. You're just, it's more of like a chess game because then you're
Yeah.
like, if I move this piece, then I can loosen this one. So it becomes a little bit of a puzzle.
Yeah. And obviously the benefit of a decade plus of seeing different deals and doing different deals. So maybe you walked several mountains and walked that path. And so you know what similar mountains look like, and you're able to navigate that. You touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to hear it from you directly. Is what do you think makes for a really successful in-house lawyer? And we can focus on commercial lawyers if it's helpful, but generally speaking, so much of our audience is on the in-house side. What advice would you give them when I ask you that question? What really makes for success on the in-house side?
I mean, just from my experience, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that have more experience and better things to say, but I think from just where I sit today, what I've seen from people that succeeded in house are one, you're not just thinking like a lawyer, you're thinking like your business stakeholder. So you're a co partner versus I'm a gate you need to get through somehow. Like that old school legal is the gatekeeper, stopper, you know, yellers of no. Those days are over. Right now, you're kind of like you're on the forefront of almost shaping the deal and helping them strategize about how to come together with a partner so that things could be sustainable, in the long term. So if you're thinking like a business person and you can combine that with explaining legalese in layman's terms,
Yeah,
then I think you're like 80% there,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Um, do you think most law firm lawyers, because I'm sure you've worked with them in terms of retention, and you do now, I'm sure you use outside counsel for a variety of different things, and most legal departments, especially two of the ones that you've been in that are incredibly large, actually three, Accenture as well, they're filled with lawyers who started their careers in law firms and then moved in house. Do you think there's a disconnect between how outside counsel really kind of thinks about the law and servicing the business and its clients versus how in-house lawyers have to think about their work and how they work with their direct business clients?
Yeah, absolutely. That transition and gap is pretty big. I think from a law firm perspective, they're trying to give you all of the facts, right?
Yeah,
They're not making the decision for you. And to be fair, like from a liability perspective, they don't understand exactly all the nuances and the corners of risk in your business. So they're not going to be able to say, well, more likely than not, I think you should go
yeah,
this way. They're really really allergic to that, when they come to you. But in house, you I think the value of a lawyer is that you are able to kind of right size the risk with the business reality. And if you're at a startup, you're operating more like a pirate ship versus a navy, right? Like
yeah.
you want
I
everything
love that pirate ship. I love it.
tightened down. But over
Yeah,
time, you kind of transition from a little pirate ship to, more of a bigger ship, and then things get more organized, more tidy. But, you know, so having a law firm sit anywhere along that path is going to be a challenge for the law firm and
yeah,
also for the in-house.
yeah. You have worked at some incredibly large legal departments, and in fact, during my time at Axiom, where I did business development, Google and Uber were two departments that I worked with directly. So learned a lot about the ins and outs of large legal departments. I worked with smaller legal departments too, along the way. And then I ended up going in house to head up legal ops at Facebook and at Coinbase, also two very large legal departments. Um, and you talked a little bit just now about in-house lawyers really needing to be able to connect to the business in some fashion,
Mhm.
to be able to advise the business appropriately. Um, did you have a sense that you were connected to the business goals while you were at Google and at Uber? And if so, like how did they succeed in giving you that visibility?
That's a really great question. So at Google, I was no, I was too low on the totem pole
Yep.
and too young in my career for them to even trust me with that liability. But as I've grown and built that trust with the business over time, I think, at Uber especially, that's, the times where I was in with the business, where they pulled me in early, were the projects that were really successful. And I would say, it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of them believing that you're there not to pick at the flaws, but you're there to identify the roadblockers proactively so that you can go around them, or so that you can preempt them so that they're not going to be roadblockers. That's when they realize, okay, you're on my side. And if you're
Yeah.
on my side, then we're working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously Uber, you're in a very different kind of role. So here's another question. You have a law degree, you have a license to practice law, you're in a contract administrator role early in your career. Did you feel like you really needed someone to take a chance on you to take that first commercial counsel role? Like what was that like?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
um, Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how many resumes I tossed into the ether. I would say, you know, I think I think that the statistic is like when I applied for Uber, and they hired me, you get to see in Greenhouse how many times you've applied previously, and
Yeah.
I had forgotten, but apparently I had applied 17 different roles
Wow.
throughout my time when I was at Accenture,
Yeah.
to get there. And so, yeah, I think absolutely it was a chance for, Accenture and Uber and, to take me on. Um, and even Google, I think they knew what they were, looking for. So if you had what they needed from a skill set perspective, then that's kind of how you open the door. But having Google on the resume as a
Yeah.
first stop was a game changer. I
Yeah.
think just in Silicon Valley, if you wanted to stay in high tech
Yep.
at the time, the FANG companies, today, like that's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
So I just got extremely fortunate with
What are they
that.
called now? Is it Mango or something like that? It's not
I
Fang
know I'm not
anymore.
dating myself. Is it mango?
No, seriously. First of all, it's not that long ago. It can't be that dated. I feel like sometimes I feel like I just started working. It's crazy. I've been in this profession for 26 years, but there are times when I feel like that was just yesterday. And my wife is like, no, dude, that was like 20 years ago. So, all right, maybe I just feel young, which is good enough in
That's
itself.
great. Yeah.
Um, so you are currently at TRM Labs, much smaller company, much smaller legal department, but you came from these three behemoth companies and these three behemoth legal departments. What would you say are some of the biggest differences in those experiences?
Yeah, the first is structure, right? Like the bigger companies have playbooks, they have templates, they have escalation paths for when something is out of the standard.
Yeah,
And when I started at TRM, it was just I was the commercial lead. So there were only three lawyers at the time, including the CLO. And we we would escalate to the CLO, but really I'm escalating to myself,
yeah,
like there's really nobody else up there. So I think just a lack of structure is one thing. And then the autonomy is the other big thing, is that you have an idea, you can just execute on it, and you're your own person that holds that accountable. Like you own
yeah,
that project. Whereas in any of the larger companies, you have an idea, you brainstorm on the idea, you think about bringing it up at a weekly sync goes by, and you're like, oh, I didn't bring it up next week. And
yeah,
then, a whole quarter goes by, and
yep,
then finally it gets sign off, and then the committee votes on it. I mean, it's dead in the water, right? Like
yeah.
before it even starts, a lot of
Is there
stuff.
a higher level of intensity in your current role than what you've seen in the past? And I say this a lot to people. I've worked at like two very intense companies from outside perception in Facebook and Coinbase. But and I'm at a company now, we are roughly north of 300 people. This
Mhm.
is hands down the most intense job I've ever had in my life. Like, do you share that experience being at a smaller company? And why do you think that is?
Yes, absolutely. Why? Well, I think because you're doing probably five people's jobs, right?
Yeah,
Every day.
yeah,
Um, and I think because there's that expectation of execution, it's not just we're brainstorming. It's like we're shipping, we're shipping in a week.
gotta get it done.
So the speed, the velocity, the volume, the high level of performance, it's a really invigorating atmosphere. Like I will have to say, this ruined me because it's like, well, I cannot ever imagine going back to a bigger company because I'll just be bored, right? Like,
Yeah,
like I'm used to this, but also there are some days like after a really tough week, you're like, I don't know how anybody can sustain this level of
yeah.
performance.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I'm aging myself out of this kind of work. Like I'll be 50 this year and like I'm physically tired sometimes,
Mhm.
especially on Fridays. Like it's just, it's one of those universal things where like Friday is the end of the work week and it's just been a crazy work week. I'm like, okay, I probably don't have to work a ton this weekend, so I'm going to just like exhale for a minute, and I
Yeah,
just realize how exhausted I am.
yeah.
So no, I got to eat my Wheaties is probably more the better advice I need to give myself.
Well, you're not alone
Yeah.
in
What
any
about in
case.
terms of resources? Like, is that a big, obviously, bigger companies tend to have more resources, not just in terms of people, but like you said, guidance,
Mhm.
playbooks. Like, we're a contracting tool. That's something that we work on with our customers all the time is, hey, do you have playbooks for this? And oftentimes the people we sell into don't have playbooks for that. So we help them create them. But what is that resourcing difference like for you?
I mean, it's night and day, right? Like, um, the resource at a large company is that if you need something and you can throw some money at the problem, you can probably throw money at the problem, or there's already a tool that
Yeah.
does all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas at a smaller company and at a startup, if you don't have the tool, the next question is, can we build it?
Yeah.
Can you become the person that builds
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And that's been really actually pretty cool, especially now with AI. I think there that has made a lot of things, a lot of work streams that used to take hundreds of thousands of dollars in law firm costs if you were to outsource it to an outside firm, or if you're building it in-house, months of your time. Like now you can really shrink that
Yeah.
into just a week, and,
Yeah.
and really and a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about operations. I'd say for the last what year are we in? We're in 2026. Let's say for the last 13 to 14 years, in-house lawyers, GCs, CLOs, um, they have needed to become far more operationally minded than ever before. And I'd say now in the age of AI, it is becoming table stakes for them
Mm,
to be operationally minded and technologically savvy. That doesn't mean they're out there coding and things like that, but these are not things that we learn in law school. Did you take a technology class in law school? I certainly did not. We didn't learn about
no.
things like spreadsheets and data and all of those kinds of things that are required to run a business. Um, but at some point along the way, if you're in house, you have to get on the operational train. When
Right.
did that start for you, and how has that evolved over the last decade of your career?
Yeah, I would say for the larger companies, we did have pretty good teams that did operations, especially at a larger company.
Yep.
There's legal ops, that's a whole org.
It's
Yeah,
a
and then
function, it's a career, 100%.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
professionals who are really good at it are extremely valuable. They are
yeah,
worth their weight in gold.
yeah,
So when I came to the startup about 4 years ago, that was the first time I was confronted with, you have a lot of volume, but you need to figure out how to operationally solve for that on your own. And that's been a challenge, because I didn't go to law school. Yeah, exactly what you were saying. Like if we wanted to do Excel spreadsheets, we probably got an MBA. But
yeah,
like I
yeah.
did not go to law school excelling in that.
Nope.
Um, and that's been the biggest learning curve really, is like, okay, carving out time to really focus on putting on a different hat and saying, okay, how do I minimize the things that are low risk, high friction, high volume? How do I automate it? How do I take it off just completely legal's radar?
Yeah,
And but I mean, that's kind of what switches you from an execution, like a contributor, to a leader. Is really you're shaping then how things are flowing. So it challenged a new part of my brain, which I actually appreciate, because I feel like I've not really had to. And humans are, if we don't have to do it, we're not going to do it.
no, so true. It's so true. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah.
Well, in that way, I mean, if you look at all the variety of different work streams that go on in an in-house department, you've got product work and privacy work and corporate work and all of the litigation. Contracting, commercial contracting is probably one of the more operationally tinted, um, or operationally leaning work streams that there are. So, and as a contract administrator early in your career, you are literally sitting at one part and overseeing a component of the chronology where a contract is first generated. The business is like, hey, here's a deal that we need to do, all the way through signature of that agreement. And there's tons of stuff in between. But then obviously that agreement needs to sit somewhere, and hopefully you're able to get at the insights that are in that agreement. But did you really kind of start digging into the operational side of things early on there, and did that shape how you thought about lawyering once you got to Uber?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they had such a sophisticated process already running so smoothly at Google, right? It was very much a, if it's on our standard paper and there's no edits, legal doesn't look at it. So
Yeah,
I can probably, I would say with 99% certainty that whatever role I was doing at Google about 13 years ago is probably no longer a role. I'm
yeah,
sure they have figured out a way to automate that. And even then it was very much a, this is what you're looking for, you're checking for these things, and then off you go. But I was really impressed by the flow that they design, which is like, you have the standard and then you have the non-standards, and then where are the exceptions, and like how do you get to yes. And it was very expedient. All of it was very fast.
yeah. At what point do you start understanding the importance of legal technology for lawyers in the in-house world? Like, when did that kind of light bulb go on for you?
When we were at Uber, we had a search for the best contracts management tool. Which, if you worked in house, you feel, there is no perfect tool.
Yeah,
There's there's good, and then there's better, and then there's like bad. Um, and that's when I realized, wow, like a tool can really make a difference. In one, we had a full time paralegal, and this person's entire job was just to train people on how to use the tool.
yeah,
Like, that's how complicated it was.
yeah,
But now we at the startup we have a different tool, and it's been great. So I feel like, you feel the pain of the wrong tools more than, you appreciate sometimes the fluidity of a good one.
yeah,
But over time, it really could be expensive for your company to have the wrong one.
yeah. And you now have experience working at these companies where there is a um we won't pass any judgment on whether it's a good process or not from getting things from point A to point B, but there is an established process for getting things from point A to point B. And you either introduce a tool into that, or you have an existing tool that kind of helps you get from point A to point B. And then you also came to a company where I'm guessing processes were not yet quite set, right? In your current company, although I'm sure you've done that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But so you have these kind of diametric opposites of the state of things from an operational perspective and how tooling plays a role. What has been your experience about the importance of having good process before thinking about a tool? And the reason I ask that is that, in my legal operations experience, and one of the things that I espouse and really is kind of gospel to me, is that people and process before technology. Because if you don't have the first two in a good space and everything's messy, then all you end up doing is you start proliferating that mess with technology. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that concept?
I could not agree with that more. And I wish more people thought about it that way instead of just going after the hottest new tool that they heard about, or they saw a really flashy demo and they thought, oh, this is it.
Yeah,
But, if you don't have a good process down, then you don't actually understand what you need, right? Like your process should, if it's a good process, well designed one, should should be like a very well tailored suit. There shouldn't be any, extra fabric anywhere it doesn't have to be, but it should tailor to your needs and make you, move, like think athleisure, right?
yeah,
Whatever. And I think, people that have that, or teams that are very articulate about what their process is, can then really scope the right tool to fit that process and grow with that process, because that's the
yeah,
other thing, is like you can meet the needs of your process today, but can you evolve with it to scale? So these are all the factors. I really love that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of teams do have it backwards. They're like, okay, we're going
yeah,
to get a tool and then we're going to bake a process into it, and then things break, and then, it's just a mess.
yeah. I use this analogy, especially with our prospects and customers who are lawyers, because it really resonates with them. I was like, and I tell them, it's like, think back to when you took the bar exam and when you were studying for the bar exam, and whoever you chose to study with, whatever, I mean, Barbary or who, there's a million others now. But when you are studying for taking essays, and I don't mean a specific subject of essays, but essay writing, you have whatever 50 minutes or 60 minutes to write the essay. And they say spend the first 5 to 7 minutes outlining your answer. Read the prompt, outline, read it again, outline a little bit. spend that time up front to do the outline, and then it is far easier for you to structure your answer and write the actual essay itself.
Yeah.
And I think about the selection of tooling as that kind of a project. If you spend the first however long it takes you um, to do the actual planning, and I want to talk a little bit about what you think about specifically as you were thinking about a new tool or a new initiative or whatever it might be. But if you do that planning up front, your chances of success in the execution, implementation, adoption are significantly higher. A, do you agree with that? I think you do. And B, what specifically, like specific steps would you engage in? Or let's say somebody comes to you and say, hey, Wei, I'd love some advice on this new tool that we want to buy. Like, what is it that you want to start that conversation in response with?
Yeah. Well, for first and foremost, I absolutely agree. I think that's such a good analogy, and I might steal it.
Yeah, steal it.
Uh, and the second one is, if somebody's coming up with a solution, then I would first want to know what they're solving for.
Yeah, love that. Yes.
Because if you can't articulate the problem statement and where the friction points are, then it's really hard to evaluate whether the tool is going to be the one for you. So, and sometimes it's surprising because they'll come to you and they'll have a bunch of different problems that they're trying to solve, and it's not really clear what the focus is. So, even just helping them prioritize, okay, like of all these pain points, which one is the most, which one is the one that if you solve for that one, it kicks loose all the others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So start with the problem statement. What are you trying to solve? I 100% agree. Which takes us into things that are literally part of every conversation in this day and age, which is AI. Let's start very broad. Your thoughts, like when was the first time you came across generative AI as a lawyer, and what are your overall thoughts around AI right now in 2026 and as we look through the next couple of years?
oh man, what a what a question. I think I came across my first ChatGPT answer maybe a year and a half ago. It
Was
was
it was it a legal thing or a personal thing?
it was personal. It was
Yeah,
somebody was like, "Hey, have you tried this? It's really
yeah,
fun." Um, and I looked at it and I thought it was. I was like, "Oh, this is actually kind of a cool thing to interact with that might make Google have to like that gives Google a run for its money. If
sure
you were
does.
to accumulate knowledge like that." And then and then I started to, and of course, like when you're at a startup, and I think this is what's so great about being at a smaller company during this day and age, is that you're so fast at pivoting because there is the need to. You're resource strapped, and so you have to pivot fast. So we were onboarded and encouraged by our founders to experiment and play around with, to the extent, say, that is safe and responsible,
Yeah.
but to play around with AI.
You mean at
And
TRM?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
we had AI demo days, we had AI enablement days, and they really invested a lot of time in the people that work here to help us find new ways to engage with the tool.
yeah.
So over the course of like the last 12 to 16 months, I would say, we built our first iteration of a contracts review bot. We loaded it with our playbooks. It's just MNDAs, right? It's just
Yep,
like a very low complexity review, but we taught it what to look for and what we cared about. And it actually enabled us to review MNDAs fairly quickly when it's not on our paper.
yep,
And we hired, so it's really good for onboarding because if you hire a paralegal and you have to then train them on every single NDA,
yeah,
exception, that's going to be very time consuming at a startup. But if you give them a bot and you say,
yeah,
run the bot, and if you have questions, we can talk about it, that cuts down your oversight by more than half. So
yeah. That's fantastic. And this is, to me, this is the beauty that the AI technology is bringing. It's democratizing to a great
yes.
extent the ability of people to do things. Now, we obviously saw the block news yesterday, and there's plenty of, well, there's two diametric views on this. One is that he has built an incredibly efficient company and this and that. And the other is, well, they hired like 6,000 people during COVID and now they had to cut, like, whatever your view may be on that, irrespective of that, we're probably going to see more instances of those kinds of things. And so that brings all this fear, FUD. You're familiar with that acronym, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It
Hmm.
floods the market and the population with FUD. What advice do you have for lawyers who are law students who are in law school, who are coming out in the next 2 or 3 years, or maybe next year, and junior lawyers now who are like, oh my gosh, where am I going to get that training? Right? You got advice,
Yeah.
as did I, which is that if you want really good legal training, you got to go to a law firm. Well, law firms aren't really using AI. Whatever Harvey may be telling you, they're not using it. Um, and so you're probably not going to get those skill sets there. And on top of that, so many clients are pushing their law firms to use AI, and even going so far as to say, hey, like, I don't really expect to see first, second, or third year associates doing this work because AI should be doing it. That's a real thing that's happening. What advice do you give this group of people who are in our profession on how to think about AI? What should they be focusing on?
Yeah, what a very pertinent question for this day and age. I would say, first of all, fear is normal, and having invested all of this money and time into law school to have this be something that you're facing when you're graduating is very challenging. But it also opens up a lot of opportunity. Like the same thing with me when I didn't go down the traditional path of going to a law firm out of law school. I would say a lot of the 10 percenters of the class were looking at me going, well, like,
Yeah.
sucks for you. Like, because you didn't make it.
Yeah.
And that's such a limiting belief, right? That there is only one way to succeed in a legal career. There are jobs that have not been made possible yet. Like there are jobs that haven't been created yet because of this AI revolution that is
Yes.
coming.
Yeah.
And there's some really great talks on this, but if you look at the history of time and just like the number of jobs throughout every single technological revolution,
Yeah.
there has been more jobs created with each one,
100%.
not
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
So I think it's less of a zero sum, like, oh, there's nothing for me. Like I'm gonna go drive Uber now, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and more
Well, they won't
about
be able to do that for long because driverless cars are coming too. So I'm sorry, but that career path may be gone too. Yeah.
um, yeah, I think you can almost harness that kind of anxiety, right? Like, cause it's just energy. Like you can harness that energy and into something that is more creative, into something that's more curious, and just
Yeah.
work on skills that are portable, work on skills that, to me, I think what served me in my career is really just this like fearlessness of the unknown.
Yeah.
Like I think most lawyers are not like that. Like they like the known, but because I've been always on kind of the unconventional path and made it work, I have built this confidence that it's going to be fine.
It
You're
is.
going to figure it out because we're
Yes.
humans, we're adaptive, and the
Yes.
more you work on those adaptive muscles, the better you get at them, and then the less fearful you are of the uncertainty that comes. And
Yeah.
I think it's just part of life that
I'm gonna say I think you are one of the most centered lawyers that I've ever had the opportunity to speak with, and I think that's such a refreshing take. And it's out there. To be very clear, it's out there. I read about this stuff every single day, um, and that concept, which was newer to me in the last maybe 6 months or so, which is with the advent of any new revolutionary technology, so email, the internet, and now AI, with every one of the previous such um, changes, the number of jobs has increased exponentially. They're not the same jobs. And so you're going to see a little bit of pain as we go through this evolution and this, whatever you may be calling this change, this time of change right now. You're going to feel a little bit of pain, but people have to take that individual intention to be like, I need to learn these new skills now, and here's how my new path is going to look. So you talked about creating that path through the mountain. Here's our mountain to climb. What does AI look like on the other side? What does it look
right.
like for us individually on the other side? And unless you're willing to take that intention, and this is a singular piece of advice I will give to every single human being today, including my kids, although they're not allowed to use AI for homework. But you got to learn how to use this thing. Learn how to use it. Understand its limitations, understand its benefits, understand its dangers,
Mhm.
understand how to navigate those, understand how to use it for your own benefit. but never lose the things that made us so human and so successful: curiosity, resilience. You embodied both of those in the way that you have gone about your career in the last 12 years. And if you keep those things and you keep that growth mindset, you are going to succeed in this world. It will. Now, will it mean that you are going to have exactly the kind of career that you envision today? Probably not, but then who does? I certainly didn't think I'd be a COO 10 years ago. I didn't even think I'd be a COO 5 years ago. And yet here I am in this role. So I think you take that learning lesson, which is the stepping stone is there. You got to be ready for it. And in order to be ready for it, you have to teach yourself new things. And AI is teaching yourself new things. Learn how to use it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't shy away from it. I am also of the belief that we are going to have far more new kinds of jobs and titles and roles with the advent of AI than we currently have today. And the thing is, we don't know what those are. And that uncertainty makes us incredibly anxious. And I totally get that. But you got to learn to live with that anxiety, I think, and you just kind of force your way through it.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Very eloquently. Yes.
All right, I have a couple of AI questions. I try to ask this of most people. I want to try these with you. Okay, so you're playing around with a bunch of different AI tools for TRM Labs. What is the biggest gap in your mind between what AI can technically do, like what's the tech, what the technology is capable of doing, and how lawyers are actually using it? Do you think there's a gap, and how big do you think that gap is right now?
I think there's a huge gap. And the gap that I'm seeing just in my own world is that lawyers are using AI like Google, right? Or we're using it as a search tool. And there's an operational side to AI that lawyers don't know how to loop together. So if you can build a bot that pulls from whatever it is, let's just put a day-to-day example. Read my email every morning, pull out the 5 top emails that are the most important with action items for me, draft my to-do list, and then prioritize it on my calendar. That is a loop that currently I don't think a lot of lawyers know how to build on their own unless there's an off the shelf tool that can do it.
Yeah,
Um, but that's kind of the nature and the vein of like what I think is possible with AI is like it's operational. You can loop it into different action items based on your set of rules. But because lawyers are using it solely for revise this contract to sound more fun,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
it's still kind of like in phase one of what's out there.
Okay, second question. And again, I think this is something you're actively doing. How do you experiment aggressively with AI without losing judgment or accountability?
Yeah, I think you got to hold on to the ownership of your work product. Like that's the biggest thing is maybe start with the low risk but high friction, tasks on your desk. Like what we were encouraged to do at the startup is like look at your calendar and like look at how you're spending your week, right?
Yeah,
Where are you spending the most of your time that has the least value to the business? And if you can identify that and it's low risk, then that's a really great candidate for experimentation.
yeah,
And I would say, it's hard for lawyers because we're very black and white. It's like
yeah,
whether we have an AI tool or we don't. But it's like you can use AI for a very small section of your work. You don't have to use it for everything. You
yeah,
can identify one area that could be optimized and experiment with a tool that just optimizes that. Because
yeah,
like I think the challenge is like there is no one tool fits all for legal.
yeah.
And in order to and everybody's trying to do it, but it's not there yet, right? So solve one problem.
Third question. What mind shift does the legal department need to make in order to thrive in this AI moment?
Hmm. I think a lot of people are fearful of AI, so they don't want to use it. There's a lot of hesitation, almost like an ownership, like I'm protecting my clients by not exposing their data or, exposing them to this. And that's a nice narrative that I think will work for a while, but um the point is not perfect. The point is iterative. So even if AI is not where you need it to be for you to be comfortable with handing, all of the cases over to the AI bot, you can, like we were just talking about, dissect it and then use it for parts of what it could help you with. And then over time, you grow that muscle and it compounds.
Yeah.
The AI literacy is really something that I believe like it compounds on itself. So the more you know, the more tools you use, the better you get.
I
Um,
love that phrase, AI literacy. I think becoming more AI literate it should be the goal, certainly of every human being on the planet, but especially lawyers right now, and especially those who are hanging on to their identity and are afraid. So you talked about the fear with respect to clients and data and privacy and security and so, which is very real. There's another aspect of fear for me that I see, which is that lawyers attach their identity to the effort that they put into their work. And to
Right.
reduce that effort reduces their identity to a certain extent. And I think we have to get rid of that mentality in order to really thrive in this AI world. And we can. I think we can do it, but it takes that intention. All right, three more questions, and then we're going to wrap up. These are more on kind of the professional development side of things in your career. Um, with the benefit of hindsight and going back and thinking about your law school experience and your law school self, what advice would you give your law school self?
I would stress so so much less as a law student if I knew that this would be me today. I'm very excited about where things have landed today,
Yeah,
and the narratives. We talk a lot about the social pressures, the environmental pressures. That all had a toll on kind of like my wellness as a law student because I was stressed about this split between what I wanted to do versus what I thought I should do because of everybody else's advice. So yeah, I think I would stress less and just go with the flow more.
yeah. Okay. So shifting that away from your law school self to current law students, um, would you change that advice at all? Would you advise them of something different, particularly given everything that's going on in our profession these days?
I think I would focus on identifying where your strengths are. Like what are the attributes about you as a person that are going to build some portable skills? Be curious about, what do I enjoy doing, and see if that translates into something that could make you better at your profession. I mean, this is kind of like a weird bridge, but that's what I'm trying to get at is like I wasn't that self-aware
Yeah,
when I was in law school that oh, my curiosity and adaptiveness is really going to get me somewhere. Like I wish
yeah,
somebody told me that,
yeah,
these traits are not just a personality
yeah,
feature, they're actually going to be your greatest strengths.
yeah.
And they will be the things that carry you from one job to the next. So,
Absolutely. So there was an aha moment in the class that I teach, and along with some of the data that I shared earlier. One of the other things that I share is a huge study that's done every 2 or 3 years. And they go out and they talk to 35,000, 40,000 employers and clients of lawyers. And they ask them, what are the top 10 competencies that you look for from your lawyers? Or they actually say, well, what are the top competencies? And there's a long list. And the top 10, and this was an aha moment for me as I started teaching this class 8 years ago. Um, of the top 10, only three are actually taught in law school:
wow.
uh, writing, legal research, and oral communication. The other seven are the things that you talked about, right?
Wow.
So it's such an interesting thing because we were not taught these things in law school. I certainly was not taught these things in life or undergrad, certainly not by my parents. It was all about hard work and getting good grades and those kinds of things, which I'm not going to say those are not important. But of those top 10, that the people who pay lawyers, they're telling their lawyers, this is what I value from you. And it's not how well you can write a brief or anything. It's not those things really. How well
Right.
do you show up? Your customer service, your responsiveness, your resilience, your dedication and loyalty to me as a client and a customer or the organization for which you work. Those are the really important things. And I think that was such an aha moment for me. And I'm so glad that this class is being taught to law students because I think they will have the opportunity to either gain more of this self-awareness earlier on in their professions than we ever did. And I think it'll suit them really, really well. Okay. Last question. This one is forward looking for you. And the analogy of like the mountain and the path, I think fits in nicely. So let's, I'm going to say, let's say 10 years from now. And I realize that in 2026, that's a really, really long time. So if you want to think 5 years ahead, that's fine too. But what's the path that you hope you have taken in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you hope to be? And it doesn't have to be a company or anything like that, but where do you want Way to be?
Oh man. Um, yeah, that really is tough with AI these days. I hope I'm, still in the loop. I hope I'm still somewhere in the architectural, program management part of when one AI bot negotiates with another AI bot and they're just fighting each other over an MSA, like I hope I'm more intertwined with the business
Yeah,
and I'm getting to be, like a co-pilot for them so that they have an extra brain that's legal minded that can help them facilitate, whatever it is that they're trying to do. Um, and enjoying life
yeah,
truly. Like,
yeah,
we're such maximalists in this country, but just having time to spend it quality time with family, friends,
yeah,
and have the AI bot run a program that I created, so that
yeah.
Friday afternoon we
And
all
be
go
more of an
skiing.
orchestrator. I love that. I love that analogy. That's a really good
Yeah.
one. All right. My guest today has been Wei Wang from TRM Labs. Thank you so much. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you so much, Akshay. I had such a blast.